From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at the darkest, most unbelievable conspiracies that the Central Intelligence Agency has been accused of orchestrating.
I was having trouble with my parents. My father and my stepmother decided to put me in the Allen Memorial Institute.
Phoenix Program.
I'm an ex-CI colonel with blood up to my armpits. Not personally, I never killed myself, but I managed wars that killed a lot of people.
The Vietnam War was and remains one of the most historically unpopular war efforts ever. Countless casualties on both sides, deeply shameful events like the My Lai massacre and the CIA's Phoenix program made up just some of the reasons why the Vietnam War was so heavily protested.
The CIA was tolerant of torture in Vietnam. It also participated in it on occasion in some of the interrogation centers as a matter of policy. Of course, as a matter of policy, it had to deny it.
For the purposes of our video today, the Phoenix program, which operated from 1968 to 1972, was described by the CIA as a set of programs that sought to attack and destroy the political infrastructure of the Viet Cong, using disturbing tactics like infiltration, torture, and even assassination. The CIA neutralized just over 80,000 people suspected of being associated with the Viet Cong.
We never got interrogation reports out of the pics. Others said, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. They denied everything. In fact, I never found one who was ever identified as a Class A VC from a village. I never found one in any of the pics. I went into all of the pics, Military Region 3.
Project Stargate.
We were mostly concerned with targeting the Soviet Union, the PRC, China, some of our other enemies, Libya, Iran, Iraq.
Psychic superpowers like telepathy and telekinesis are the stuff of science fiction and superhero comic books, right? Unfortunately, at least for now, the answer is yes. But that didn't stop the CIA from trying to find out.
So they asked the California psychics at SRI, can you tell us what's happening there? And with mixed results, nonetheless, there was enough information that convinced the CIA this is worth investigating in a serious way.
In the 1970s, unnerved by reports that the Soviet Union was conducting research into parapsychology and the occult, the agency set up a top-secret research unit within the U.S. Army that would attempt to prove the existence of so-called remote viewing, the in-house CIA moniker for what was essentially telepathy. The program ran for a few decades, but would ultimately shut its doors in 1995 after failing to prove the existence of such psychic phenomenon.
Remote viewing is a perceptual technique whereby a person can describe places, events, or people that are perceived mentally but separated from the viewer by distance, shielding, and even time. It's, if you like, it's a trained intuitive ability.
Operation Chaos. The CIA's mission, which is ostensibly to collect intel about global threats to U.S. national security, became more than a little murky when the existence of Operation Chaos was revealed. A domestic espionage operation, Chaos's goal was straightforward. Chaos would attempt to uncover any possible foreign influences on quote-unquote submersive American groups and organizations. The program, founded by President Lyndon B. Johnson and continued by President Richard Nixon, maintained a network of informants as well as covert wiretaps to spy on American citizens. Targets of Operation Chaos included activist groups like the Students for a Democratic Society, the Black Panther Party, Women Strike for Peace, and more.
Recently, I read a book called Atom Bomb Children. In this book, it was a collection of compositions written by children that were living through the bomb. Ones had to see such misery and torture. At night, when I put my 5 children to sleep, I would touch their arms and wonder, could this happen to them?
Aiding and abetting illicit trafficking.
Let me understand what you're saying. A ton of cocaine was smuggled into the United States of America by the Venezuelan National Guard?
Well,
in cooperation with the CIA?
That's exactly what appears to have happened.
Although you'd think that one of the CIA's main goals would be to end drug trafficking, it's faced numerous accusations of participating in the illegal trade since its founding in 1947. Said DEA agent Hector Berreyes, quote, "I know specifically that some of the CIA contract workers, meaning some of the pilots, in fact were bringing drugs into the U.S. and landing some of these drugs in government military air bases," end quote.
Put it this way, Mike. If this has not been approved by DEA or an appropriate law enforcement authority in the United States, then it's illegal. It's called drug trafficking. It's called drug smuggling.
Similarly, historian Alfred McCoy has claimed that the CIA was condoning and even cooperating with corrupt elements in Southeast Asia's illegal drug trade out of political and military considerations, involving itself in the Golden Triangle heroin trade. Several investigations have failed to prove these allegations, but they couldn't be ruled out either way.
One example, Levine said, was during the Nixon administration when he was about to bust a major source of heroin.
And I was stopped cold, because that source were our allies in the Vietnam War.
Levine said this was not an isolated incident, that it had happened many times in his 25-year career.
Colluding with the Contras.
My name's Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist. I've been an investigative journalist for about 25 years for daily newspapers. And in 1996, I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking.
Many Americans will likely be familiar with the deeply damaging Iran-Contra affair, which caused President Ronald Reagan's credibility and overall reputation to take a serious, lasting hit. Although several investigations did not find sufficient evidence to justify the accusation, the CIA has been accused of playing a not insignificant role in the scandal.
What my story showed was that the cocaine that was being sold in those neighborhoods was coming from mainly one source, and this one source was being used to finance a guerrilla war in Central America.
That's specifically with regard to their links to the right-wing Nicaraguan militant group, the Contras, as part of a U.S. effort to overthrow the Sandinista government. To that end, the 1986 Kerry Committee found payments to drug traffickers by the U.S. State Department of Funds authorized by the Congress for humanitarian assistance to the Contras.
The general idea of the CIA dealing drugs was something that the American mainstream press had never written about before, and that's why it prompted outrage among blacks, among drug reform activists, among politicians, by the CIA, by every federal agency involved in the drug war, because it showed they weren't doing their jobs, that it was a fraud.
Operation Mockingbird. The alleged existence of the CIA's Operation Mockingbird is enough to make you realize that propagandistic state-controlled messaging can come from any part of the world, even bedrocks of democracy like the United States. While its existence has never been formally proven, its supposed activities will likely cause you to hope that it never is. In the aftermath of the explosive Watergate scandal, the congressional inquiry group known as the Church Committee discovered some truly shocking secrets. According to Carl Bernstein, more than 400 American journalists have secretly carried out assignments for the Central Intelligence Agency. That being said, no evidence exists to suggest that the CIA carried out a plan to influence American mass media as a whole. The assassination of President John F. Kennedy.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
We don't need to tell you that there exists no shortage of conspiracy theories as to who truly took President Kennedy's life in 1963. While the official story, that Kennedy was slain by disgruntled lone gunman Lee Harvey Oswald, has been widely accepted as the truth, some have accused the CIA of puppeting Kennedy's murder.
Garrison, the Warren Commission said that Oswald acted alone and there was no conspiracy. Apparently you do not believe the Warren Commission's report. Is that correct?
That's correct. I believe the Warren Commission was wrong and will be shown to be wrong.
New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison began researching the theory in 1966 and arrested international trademark leader Clay Shaw for his supposed involvement in the Kennedy assassination. Shaw was accused of working for a CIA front organization that conspired to kill Kennedy. Although the businessman was brought to trial in 1969, he was ultimately found not guilty.
What are your general feelings about the case now?
Well, you understand I am constrained by court order not to discuss the case as such. I can say to you that as I have said before, I am completely innocent. I have no knowledge of any conspiracy whatsoever to kill President Kennedy or anyone else.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them.
If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications.
MK-Ultra.
I was given a glass of Kool-Aid, and so were the other children. This Kool-Aid was spiked with LSD. It was horrible.
The details of this top-secret program are so unsettling that you'd want them to be a wild conspiracy theory. Tragically, MK-Ultra is anything but a fantastical fabrication. Operating from 1953 to 1973, MK-Ultra was designed by the CIA to test out new methods of torture based on forcing powerful psychoactive drugs on interview subjects. This was a way of weakening their resolve and making them more susceptible to revealing information that the agency wanted.
It was the most secret program ever conducted by the CIA in the United States. Patients at psychiatric hospitals, prisoners in federal institutions, and even people in the public were given drugs without their awareness or consent and experimented upon.
However, drugs were just one part of the story. The related Operation Midnight Climax recruited sex workers to test the effects of non-consensual LSD on their unsuspecting clients. Revealed to the public in 1975, Project MK-Ultra stands as possibly the CIA's most damaging black mark.
The CIA knew that it was breaking, every moral, ethical, and legal law in the books to do these experiments.
They all were behind it. They all knew what they were doing, but they weren't doing it out of care or love. They were doing it out of military and political reasons.
So, which CIA conspiracy theory shocked you the most? Be sure to let us know in the comments below.
While historians and survivors have exposed MK-Ultra's exploits to the world, much remains unknown about its extent and wider impact.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.